Good afternoon and welcome to the meeting of Cabinet on Monday, the 19th of May. I'd like to welcome Councillor Cornish for the Green Group, who I'm sure will make a contribution on agenda item 5. Also Councillor Richard Bates. If we move on to agenda item number 1, which is to receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any item on the agenda. Councillor Gibson.
Just to say that I'm a member of East Grinstead Town Council in connection with item 5.
Thank you very much. No one else, I assume. Then to receive apologies for absence. Councillor Hobbs is unable to be with us today, so he is absent. I will take, I'm not sure where I'd take it on the agenda item, but Councillor Hobbs would normally be Vice Chair.
Yes, Vice Chair.
So I'm proposing that Councillor Gibson is Vice Chair for this meeting. If that's acceptable to other Cabinet members, just need to nod. Thank you. Then moving to agenda item 3, to be agreed by general affirmation, the open and exempt minutes of the previous meeting held on the 10th of March 2025. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed, thank you. Then agenda item 4, to consider any items that the Chairman agrees to take as urgent business. I have none, which brings us to the substantive item on the agenda, which is the parking strategy and the Queensway car parks business case. And I'll go first of all to Councillor Cornish, if there's anything you wish to say.
Thank you very much. Yeah, only a couple of observations, I guess, really, in terms of this process, because I guess it's taken quite a while to get to this point. And obviously, at the outset, a considerable amount of expense was set aside for this second level. And I guess East Grinstead have, struggled with capacity parking for a while. And I think, this whole thing plays into travel more broadly and modal shift. So my question, I suppose, if a significant deviation is taken from the second level on the car park, what happens to those funds that are earmarked? Because obviously that's a significant sum. And how will that play out in terms of parking for East Grinstead in general? I think that was my main issue about the funding, really. And I guess the observation that costs have nearly doubled, I suppose, since 2021, which is, we all know why. And I guess that's something which is regrettable, but I would hope that in the way forward, which I know we'll be going back to probably some further work with officers or consultation, I would hope that we can consider within that our drive for modal shift and how we best manage different ways of transport and travel within East Grinstead and the district as a whole. But that's my only points on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. I'll now go to Simon Hughes to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chairman. As Cabinet will be aware, the parking strategy adopted by the Council sets out how we aim to provide a modern, sustainable, efficient and customer-focused parking experience using the latest technologies. And as you'll know, that requires investment. So in 2021, our expert consultants, Parking Matters, produced an investment strategy to support the overall parking strategy. Queensway Car Park is one of 10 owned by Mid Sussex and operated by Mid Sussex in East Grinstead. 7 are charged car parks and 3 are uncharged. Detailed work underpinning the parking strategy revealed the shortfall in East Grinstead town centre during peak periods. And in 2021, we considered reviewing Queensway and looking at including construction of a single deck above the surface to optimise spaces to address those issues. Also in 2021, as I think everyone will recall, the scheme's costs were estimated at 1.9 million, and that promoted a feasibility study once we could see the impact of COVID on parking. So we repeated those studies again in 2023, and that again showed high occupancy rates in the town centre, with that car park effectively full during peak periods, and we then do spot counts, as we do across all our car parks, again in 2024. And that again confirmed high occupancy rates. So following that, we then completed a more detailed study, feasibility study, and paragraphs 15 to 18 outline the design and costs work. Detailed work provided a cost estimate of 3.9 million for the scheme. That's significantly higher than the original estimate, and that challenges the council's finances, and it also has 0 internal rate of return. So that means that the revenue generated by the car park does not support the capital required to build it. That work was completed to provide a cost estimate, and it included modelling, benchmark work, design, planning advice, topographical surveys and drainage surveys. So it's a thorough study. I think it's fair to say that certainly for the team, that is a disappointing outcome. It reflects the inflationary pressures on projects like this, and also on the reduced council's flexibility since the pandemic on its capital programme. And paragraphs 30 to 35 outline the proposed next steps and other options considered, also in paragraph 39. Also to answer a broader issue, this council and its parking works with the West Sussex Highways Authority, which is responsible for on-street parking, where we look at parking in the round and how it influences each area where parking is required. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'm going to move the recommendations, but before I speak, just a couple of questions, if I may. Obviously, we had the tariff change, and just think for the record, an understanding that the tariff changes have not affected transaction volumes in East Grinstead or indeed in the other towns. That would be fair.
Right.
So the problem that we had with capacity in East Grinstead, there's no change in that capacity problem as a result of tariff changes. Thank you for that. And then the second question is, if users of car parks had a free, well, they have a free choice of where they go. I think what I'm basically asking is, in the round, are there sufficient spaces in East Grinstead, but not necessarily all in the right place at the right time, if you see what I mean?
Yes, I do see what you mean, and I think, and that goes to the heart of the parking strategy. I think if you aggregate up, you can look at what is sufficient parking for a whole area, but that is different from what is needed in each specific location, which is why in town centres, churn is needed. People tend to use car parks in town centres for shopping, sometimes for restaurants and so on, for a short period of time. So in order to support the vitality of a town centre, it's important that those car parks generate some churn, otherwise people don't have a place to park to go to those town centres. Whereas in car parks that are further from a town centre, that can support things like long stay car parking, commuter parking, and also next to our parks and open spaces, we tend to provide parking that's uncharged, particularly because that supports our goals around health, active travel, people using parks and open spaces for other means. So that's not a short answer to a question, I appreciate, but it reflects why we have a parking strategy. And it also reflects, and I know this is something that we have discussed previously here, why the issue of dealing with car parks in villages is a complex matter. Because in larger areas where there are more car parks, you have more choice and more ability to have a strategy, whereas in villages, multiple people have multiple and often conflicting needs for that car park, and that's why we have an adopted strategy for those two.
Thank you, that's useful. So, I mean, I think the starting point is, it's £3.9 million to provide an additional 100 car parking spaces, works out at around, over £30,000 per space. So difficult to justify that expenditure, and I quite understand that, the business case with tariffs where they are, you're not going to get a return to make, to justify the business case, and you couldn't, on the other side of the argument, adjust the tariffs to make the business case work, because it would be a real disincentive to use the car park. So I think that road is closed off. And personally, I think when we look at other aspects of the capital programme, if it was a choice between our drive on temporary accommodation, for example, and using the resources we have to fix what is a long-standing and difficult problem for all local authorities against 100 car parking spaces, I think my heart and my head would definitely say we should be fixing the temporary accommodation problem, because I'm sure I'm not the only one that gets casework where people are in a homelessness situation, and their household has some complex needs, which we're trying to support them through in finding them suitable accommodation. We need to build resilience into that. So for me, and very mindful of the pressures in East Grinstead, and the kind of obscure question I asked was about, well, how do we create a structure in East Grinstead that will enable users of the car parks to find a space, which is possibly more suited to their needs. So, if they're going to stay in town for, 2, maybe 3 hours, they don't, for a specific purpose, they don't necessarily need Queensway. They might go somewhere else and then walk a short distance, so it supports some active travel, so a bit of modal shift, and creates that bit of additional capacity in the town centre. And so I think the work that we're suggesting that officers carry out is around, I think, that technology need. And I know we've got the pilot projects that are going out in 3 car parks, one in East Grinstead, one in Hayward Heath, and one in Burgess Hill. But my sense is that we should then take East Grinstead specifically and be looking at, what is the model for, really effective, user-friendly car parking experience that will make the life easier for the user, so that they know where spaces are. They can make informed choices about, do I park slightly out of town and then walk in because I'm not in an urgent need. I'm going to dwell in town for longer. And I think technology may be the way to go, because it's certainly not going to. I'd be disappointed if it cost anything like 3.9 million. So I think it may well be a cost-effective solution, and it may well be the most effective use solution. And to use East Grinstead as the test case for that would be then A, supporting East Grinstead residents, but B, the proof of concept for the rest of the district. I think that's where I would like to go, and I think the recommendations underpin that, but put a bit more flesh on the bones. I don't know what other members think. Who shall I go to? Anyone? Councillor Gibson. Shall I come to you, Councillor, as the seconder? Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Very pleased to second the report here and the recommendations. I'm also very pleased to hear you praising technology. Music to my ears. Yes, 3.9 million is a lot of money, but I think there's a much wider issue that we're facing here. East Grinstead, like many market towns, has clearly been struggling to find a way forward through the change in high streets. We've seen many of the larger brands moving out, and we've seen a transition which has been ongoing. The number of gyms, the number of coffees, shops, we've got restaurants coming in. If you look at the licensing applications, then clearly there's a focus on people bringing in that leisure industry and that interaction into it, and clearly developing the nighttime industry. And I think that whatever we're looking at here has to be set in that context. The headline in East Grinstead has been very much about the tariffs, but actually underneath that, there's been steady working between the Town Council, the East Grinstead Business Association, in terms of looking at the way in which the overall parking experience in East Grinstead can be improved. So working within the framework of the strategy which this administration inherited, 2020 to 2030, and picking it up at the point where really we needed to start pushing forward with it. We've been pleased to bring forward a number of innovations, and I think that that's important. We've got the technology coming in. The technology will also help with the enforcement issue, and I think there is a serious enforcement issue, both within the car parks, but also out on the streets, and we hear about that in terms of vehicles which are parked, blocking pavements and so on. So I think that there is a lot of benefits going to come out of that, as well as the background data to better understanding of the car parks. For the Business Association, pay on exit is the key issue that they've raised. That is something which we are working to cure. We are behind, I think, in terms of the parking experience that you get almost everywhere, in terms of being able to pay for the duration that you've been there when you've finished your business. And that is, of course, incredibly important. If it's about footfall, it's also about the duration of spend in terms of, that's what the analysis shows, in terms of the amount of money that goes into commercial enterprises. People who spend longer, as well as more, are going to push that up. We've also got the annual permits coming for the CPZ users, and I think the problem there is a problem that we see in many places of just over-parking on the streets with nowhere to go. Very frustrating for people, so we have to recognise that an extra deck on the car park would alleviate that specifically. There would be very strong social benefit from the improvement in overnight parking, and as I came away from an East Grinstead Town Council meeting on Tuesday last week, I glanced in, and undoubtedly that car park was full. I think it's also worth mentioning the work that we're doing on the Business Improvement District, which is being done between the Town Council, this council, and the East Grinstead Business Association. And I think that this look at car parking space has to fit within that, as well as some other ambitious work in terms of what can we do in terms of using. Can we look at shared spaces? What capacity is there for closing some of the roads, pedestrianisation, in order to improve the shopping experience that people currently get in places like the High Street and indeed in London Road, where, of course, the other side is that businesses love the customer who drops off for 5 minutes and has the ability to park immediately in front of them, and that. And I think I didn't mention permits for volunteers, and I should do that as well, because that's going to come in once the analysis has been done on that. But I would like to pick up the point on active travel. East Grinstead is, of course, famous for the Felbridge roundabout and the queues which build up at that. There are a number of initiatives going on that, with the County Council working with Surrey County Council in order to look at what can be done to alleviate that. And the focus there is active travel. And if something can be done alongside that in order to build it into the way in which we use the car parks in East Grinstead, then that would be excellent. I have to recognise that 3.9 million is a lot of money. And I would just query whether there's any line in the capital budget at all, because as far as I'm aware, and I think that we should, picking up on Councillor Cornish's comment, just clarify that point as to whether or not there is a line in there at 1.9 million or whatever figure, because clearly that is. As to the design itself and the initial discussions which I've had with this, there is a very clear there's a very clear imbalance between those who think it's fantastic to have the opportunity of extra car parking and those who simply see that we are in danger of building an eyesore in the middle of the town. And I do have, I would like the officer to say a little bit about, from my observation, there's something between a 3 to 4 metre drop across the car park at the moment, running from the library down to Queen Street. And I think that I would just like to hear a little bit more about the work that's been done on drainage in order to make sure that if we're putting a deck on top, then we aren't going to run into problems. I know there's arguments about the total surface and all the rest of it. So I'm very happy to support this. Further work is needed. It needs to be done in the context of the other initiatives, the other innovations that we've got running. And at that point, I'll pass.
Thank you. Just before I go back to Simon to answer your points, I think that what we're saying is that we can't bring forward a second deck because of the cost. The business case doesn't support it. So we do the work to find an alternative which achieves broadly the same result using technology. I think I'm right in saying that we would like the whole strategy is dependent upon the additional income would deliver the changes. So be it technology or an additional deck, there isn't a capital line for it. It's all out of the tariff increases that is allowing us to do this investment. That's correct, Simon?
Yes, it is. There is no capital allocation for this work, and there wasn't a 1.9 million capital allocation either. When we do our capital programme, we have effectively oven-ready schemes, so we do the work to know that it's feasible and deliverable. So there isn't a sum that is currently sitting within the capital programme. And paragraph 24 sets out some of the challenges within the capital programme. And both Councillor Gibson and yourself are right in that we do know through the previous reports that we provided to Cabinet that the investment in technology improves both incoming car parks, enforcement, and frees up enforcement activity for on-street car parking, as you said. And I think critically, we also know in the data that we used to develop the car parking strategy that one of the reasons that one of the problems in town centres is emissions and congestion from people trying to find spaces. So technology in car parks allows them to identify where those spaces are. So again, that does have a demonstrable impact both on sustainability but also the customer experience in a location. To answer the question regarding the drop at Queensway, the work has been done to look at the drop. It's also fair to say that drop is actually quite helpful when you have decking because it provides a facility for ramps. So it's not unusual for a deck car park to have that anyway. And certainly if you go to park in central Brighton, you'll see that's the case for some of the car parks there. But we have had detailed survey work done and detailed design work done by architects so that were we to level that would be an addition, millions in addition for those groundworks and isn't necessary either. So that's why that isn't levelled.
Thank you. Councillor Hicks, you had your light on.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I commend the report. It's a summary of the challenges facing particularly the provision of the Queensway car park. It's disappointing about the cost increase. I note the financial projections that show it not being viable. Even if we were to increase charges, it would need to be a substantial increase to make it viable. I think in terms of the decking proposal, I know there's mixed feelings in terms of how it would affect the character of the surrounding area. The car parking layout can often be problematic with decking, and of course the 30-week build period and what that would do to the town centre at any time of the year, really. There clearly are some concerns given the huge cost increase. And noting also in terms of the financial projections, if we increase capacity in that central car park, how would that affect the demand for other car parks? And how would the increased number of spaces be utilised in terms of there's no clear answer in terms of whether they would all be filled to capacity in terms of if we did increase the number of car spaces. As the report notes our overall financial situation as a council in terms of reserves. We don't have huge reserves that we can put in to subsidise the scheme. So again, that is a negative issue in terms of being able to afford to take this forward. But certainly, as the previous speakers have highlighted, there are issues that we need to address in terms of making it easier for people to park in our car parks and providing them with more information, and particularly given the capacity issues at this car park, then in terms of some sort of signage and live display of the number of car parks, spaces and so on would be useful. The report refers to the wider car parking strategy, which we're all anxious to see implemented in terms of the new technology trials that has been alluded to. And I'm also conscious we need to ensure continued investment in managing our car parks on a day-to-day basis, just making sure some of our older car parking machines, the paying machines, are upgraded or replaced as soon as possible. And that we continue to meet the day-to-day needs of our parking users with the safe parking scheme in terms of the standards of excellence in our existing car parks. So I support the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Cook.
Oh, yes. I just want to say that I'm very happy to support the recommendation, and that it's very disappointing that the solution of the extra deck for 107 more spaces hasn't been found to be viable. And so the next step, because there is an issue that needs to be dealt with, is going to have to be more work, looking at technology and also trying to integrate some active travel into the answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we can move to the recommendations. I mean, I think just before we vote on the recommendations, I think clearly as a cabinet, we've I know we've set officers some further work to do, but clearly on the basis of we come up with a solution that's going to work for East Grinstead, and on the basis that it then works for East Grinstead, we can then take that as a proof of concept and look at how it may well then be able to support the other two towns, Haywards Heath and Burgess Hill. Yes, it's not what anybody wanted to hear, but I think the important thing is that we haven't given up. We want to try and find a solution for East Grinstead, and I'm sure officers will come back, report in the not too distant future with something that will fit their needs. On that basis, shall we move to the recommendations in paragraph 2 and vote in the usual way on our touchscreens? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. That is the only substantive item on the agenda, and I now may call this meeting to a close. Thank you very much. Thank you.